Hey, hope everybody is well. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody has had a fair day on this dreary kind of wet evening here in Manitoba, Canada. I'm going to start a new show tonight on the channel, and this is called Ranking the Albums. And tonight's first episode is on Genesis. Genesis really needs no introduction, and if you watch this channel, you'll know that I'm a pretty big Genesis fan. Anyways, let's get started. Their debut album From Genesis to Revelation. Fact is, this is not an album that is often described as part of their discography other than just by name. Doesn't really fit in with the rest of the group's music at all. It's quite different, as you probably all know. But having said that, it is worth a listen, but it's nothing like the Genesis to come. And I agree with most people. I would probably keep it off the list, but I'm going to put it on here just because of its name. And as an overall rating, I gave it a 72%. So it's not an entirely bad album. It does have merit. So we'll put him down here. Now, their follow-up to From Genesis to Revelation was Trespass. And this was a very good sophomore effort with some very young musicians putting together a well-performed collection of solid pieces. The basic approach seems really established here for Genesis, and they continue to refine their sound from here on out. This is essential Genesis, in my opinion, and with songs like Looking for Something, Stagnation, Dusk, The Knife, this is an album that I would say, and I would probably call their debut. And as an overall rating for it, I'm going to give it an 83%. So the guy is going to come up to here. It's definitely an album, it's a grower. It's one of those ones I think, in my opinion, took a couple of listens to actually enjoy and fully understand. All right, following Trespass, we have what I would call the first great Genesis album, Nursery Cryme. It is the beginning of things to come. With songs such as The Musical Box and Fountainless Analysis, it is a great album and definitely a prog classic. I would give it a rating of 86%. And to me, this is probably the best place to start with Genesis. All right, following Nursery Cryme, we have the mammoth Foxtrot. A classic for many reasons, and is the sense of the word. This is so blisteringly brilliant. It resonates long with the listener after they listen to it. And once you finish, you want to immediately go back. It's one of those albums that gives you the sensation of fulfillment. So you don't want them to listen to anything after it. I hope that makes sense. With great songs such as Watchers of the Sky, Get Them Out by Friday, Can Utility, and of course, The Great Supper's Ready, you can't go wrong. So I give Foxtrot a rating of 96%. So he's going to end up here in the top tier. All right, and following that, you maybe thought back that they couldn't top Foxtrot, but in my opinion, they did with Selling England by the Pound. Now, this for me is For me, Selling England by the Pound is the greatest prog album of all time. It's one of them for sure. It's just so tour de force and dynamic, intriguing, powerful progressive music from beginning to end. I really don't know how else to describe it. And every song on this album is a bona fide prog classic. The only one little down part, the one little negative thing I would have to say is I think musically, Foxtrot is a better album, but personally, overall, my number one favorite is going to be Selling England by the Pound. So we'll put him up here. Okay, now we have an album which is going to draw a little bit of criticism on my part, and that is The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. This album to me is sort of toppled under its own weight. Every band has a double album. You know, I think of The Wall was the first one that comes to mind, and Genesis was no exception. I think predictably it was going to be overblown and overstuffed, but they did manage to keep their dignity and produce an album that at least is on par with some of their better works. I have a really kind of a love-hate relationship with this album. I just don't get it. My favorite song, The Carpet Crawlers, is from this song, and another album from this album is the Into the Cage, which is another strong song on the album. I just, for whatever reason, I just cannot grasp it. And I've tried year after year. I tried 2 or 3 times a year to sit down and just fully under this album. And I don't know why. I'm going to give it a rating of 81%. That's not a knock on it, other than I hear music. We all hear music differently. So I have no reason to put it higher than this, because it's such a dense album to me that I can't wrap my head around it. All right, now we have Trick of the Tail. The immediate consequence of Gabriel having left after the Lamb was going to be something that was going to be very hard to top, but the boys, along with Phil Collins singing, seemed to pull it off. In fact, I think they were a stronger band afterwards. It's got the usual greatness of Tony Banks, Steve Hackett, Mike Rutherford, of course, and this really makes this album shine, is that it's, to me, it has always sounded more as a group. Effort, more than just, you know, Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, Peter Gabriel. Everybody seemed to be on equal playing, equal songwriting, and it really shows. You know, we've got great songs on this as Dance on the Volcano, Entangled is great, Squonk, Ripples, and a great Los Endos ending of the album. It holds a special place in my heart. This is probably the first Prog Genesis I heard, so it always kind of, you know, hit me right here every time I hear it. And I give it a rating overall of 91%. So he's going to slide up there. And after Trick of the Tail, in fact, later that year of 76, I believe, we had Wind and Wuthering, which is actually a very enigmatic album. By no means resting on the laurels of their previous masterpieces, but delivers what I can only describe as an extreme confident presentation of some of Genesis' most thought out ideas. It sounds like a band that finally is at ease with who they are, and there's plenty to investigate and plenty to like on this album. You know, you got great songs. My favorites off of it are 11th Earl of Mar, One for the Vine, Blood on the Rooftop, and of course, the Tony Banks masterpiece of Afterglow. As far as a rating, I gave Wind and Wuthering an 88%. So he's going to go up here with Nursery Cryme. Now, Steve Hackett would leave, and we would have the album, and then there were 3. I really do enjoy this album, but the biggest knock I have on it is the production. It's very muddy sounding to me, but there's enough of the old Tony Banks synth magic to keep my prog interests interested. In my opinion, the shorter songs have great lyrics, good themes, and you can kind of start to hear the pop sensibilities coming into the band, you know, with songs as Follow You, Follow Me, and Many Too Many. This is a controversial album with the fans, but it sounds a lot more like Wind and the Wuthering to my ears than it does to Duke to me. Songs on it that I really enjoy are Down and Out, Undertow, Many Too Many, and Follow You, Follow Me. And I gave it a rating of 85%. All right, and after And Then There Were 3 is the album Duke. With Duke, the writing seemed to be very much on the wall where Genesis was going. they're starting to lose a little bit of their traditional fan base in pursuit of wider fame, which is only understandable. I think you want to progress and become more popular, and to do that, you do have to compromise and change a little bit. And like I said, this is just the start of the transition, but this still has got a lot of prog influence on it and pop sensibilities that I think most people would agree you can enjoy. Favorite songs off this album are Duchess, of course, is one of my personal favorites. Guide Vocals is a great song. Duke's Travels and Duke's End is another great instrumental prog epic, if we'll call it that. And I give it an 85% rating as well. Duke up here. Now we're getting into a little bit of a controversial period of their time with the album Abacab. This is a very submissive album. It's not a disaster that some claim to be. It's there's some really good quality songs on here. Keep It Dark is a real grower despite its simplicity. It's one of the better songs on it. The thing that really brings this album and the following after it, the Shapes album, the self-titled one, is there's two songs that should not have even been written. And the one on this one is called Who's Done It? It's a horrible song, and if anything, it actually, in my opinion, brings the rating down. My two favorite songs off of this album are Abacab and Keep It Dark, and I gave it an overall rating of 82. All right, after Abacab, we have 1983's self-titled album. And this is definitely not essential in most people's prog rock collection, but it's a great pop prog rock album. You know, it's got two of my all-time favorite Genesis songs, that being Home by the Sea and Second Home by the Sea, as well as the great But Creepy Mama. And it's an album, I think, like Abacab. It's like I said, it's got one of those songs, being Illegal Alien, that should never have been put to tape and put on a Genesis album. They just, once again, I think they seem to bring the overall rating down. I know some people share that opinion. Some people are like, whatever, but I just, those two every time, I don't skip too many songs when I listen to albums, but those two are always the ones that get skipped or I don't listen to. And I gave it a rating of 82% as well. I think it is on par with Abacab and is very equal. And it's kind of like an older stepbrother. All right, and after the self-titled album, we have Invisible Touch. Now, this is the very first Genesis album I purchased on my own. And for that reason, it does hold a kind of a emotional soft spot in my heart. And to me, it is a very, very good album. It has a nice flow, and it has a perfect combination of prog and pop. And there's some real nice atmospheres around in it. It has been listened to with an open mind. It's not all bad stuff. I have to say, Tonight, Domino, and The Brazilian are three of the best Genesis songs that they have ever written. And I hold this album in quite high place. I've given it a rating of 88%. Based on the merit, like I said, that it combines pop and prog in probably the most perfect way. Like, it just seems to work on both angles. All right, after Invisible Touch, we have We Can't Dance. We Can't Dance has its shortcomings. There are some great moments here, but the presentation as a whole is rather uneven and overly long. This album is a real hard one to digest and listen to in one setting, and I think that is one of the major weaknesses of it. You know, of course, you're going to have the somewhat progressive tracks. I use that term loosely. And then you have the unavoidable balladry, which by this point, I don't want to say this and compare it, but this does have real feelings of a Phil Collins solo album. And I say that with the utmost respect because he does that very well. But at the same time, this album does have some really strong standout tracks, such as No Son of Mine, Driving the Last Spike, and another personal favorite of mine, Fading Lights, which they are actually doing on their current tour. Go check out some video on that. It's just a breathtaking song, and it's great to see those guys performing it because I never thought I'd hear it live again. And of course, this is the last album with Phil Collins. And as an overall rating, I gave it an 80%. Now we go to the last studio album called Calling All Stations. And this, like I said, will be the final recorded studio album of the band under the name Genesis. And this really comes across to me as it was just Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford's just going through the motions. The album seems a little bit too safe. I don't think they took a lot of musical chances. I don't really have anything else to say about it. I don't listen to it that often. It's not a horrible album by any means. It's just not what you would consider Genesis. The title track is very good. Actually, I'll give it a lot of credit. It is one of my favorite songs on the album, as well as the single Congo. And an overall rating I gave it was a 76. So it kind of fits in here nicely. I do encourage you to check it out. It's not bad if you've never heard it. I do listen to it. It's not bad, like I've said. It's quite enjoyable. All right, guys. That has been me ranking the studio albums of Genesis. Leave your comments to know. I'd like to know where these would fit in with your personal standings of the album. As usual, take care of each other, guys, and we'll see each other real soon. Good night.